Okay, it's time to degree the camshaft. I know that many people are waiting for this video, and I hope that I don't disappoint you guys with my explanations and I don't get you bored. Anyways, there are so many things to cover in this video and I hope it doesn't become too long. So please watch faster, okay? As fast as possible so the video doesn't become extremely long. Thank you. So first off, I installed the gears on the crankshaft and on the camshaft and I checked the alignment. I bought two different shims for the crankshaft gear, 4000 and 6000, but I ended up not using any, which was surprising for me, but it is what it is. The two gears aligned without any shims. Next I had to make a new mount for my degree wheel because the one from the TR4 doesn't fit, of course. And I used the sleeve that I took from the crankshaft. It was marked, so I bought a new one and the old one I turned into a mount for my degree wheel. And this is how it works. I couldn't use my piston stop for the TR4 either because I don't have the head installed on the engine yet, and I also need guides for two of the push rods on the first cylinder. I need two push rods there so I can install my dial gauge on top so I can measure the travel of the push rods up and down. So I combined the two things in one, the piston stop and the guides for the push rods. And this is what I built. I took an old push rod and cut it in the middle because I didn't need the full length, and then I welded a washer on it and installed a spring. At the top I put this plate which I just cut and made the holes, and now the spring pushes the push rod down and the camshaft pushes it up whenever it needs to be pushed up. There's one more hole next to it for the exhaust valve, and the bolt that's right in the middle of the plate is the piston stop. When I bolt it down, it goes under the top dead center of the piston and stops it there. I think that's ingenious too, and of course it's not my idea. I saw it in the website of Macy's Garage. You can learn many more tips and tricks there, and there's a lot of useful information. I recommend this website, so I'm gonna put a link in the description. And here you can see the tool mounted on the engine already, and now I had to install the timing chain. So to do that, I positioned the crankshaft so the mark on the gear matches the mark on the plate, and the mark on the camshaft needs to be seen through the hole on the gear that has mark next to it, and the two marks on the gear need to point towards the mark on the plate. So this is really tricky because you have to eyeball everything, and that's why I prefer to use the marks only for the initial installation of the chain and then the degree wheel for the final tune-up. So after I installed the chain and the gears, I checked the marks if everything still matches, which it did. But what I forgot was I forgot to put the bolts on the camshaft. And then when I was turning the crank, the camshaft wasn't spinning, but anyways, that was another story. So now I put the degree wheel, I put it in the approximate top dead center where I thought it was, and now it was time to find the true top dead center. To do that, I backed up a little bit the crankshaft and I tightened the piston stop a little bit so its tip goes under the level of the top dead center of the piston. Then I turned the crankshaft again until I couldn't turn it anymore, and then I took note of the position, which was approximately 13 degrees. Then I made a full turn in the other direction, almost full turn, until the piston stopped again at the piston stop, and it showed 13 after top dead center, which was a fluke because I was expecting to be something different. It has to be exact same amount before and after top dead center, and here I did it the first time. But if it wasn't equal, I was gonna have to reposition the degree wheel until it shows me the same number before and after top dead center. Then I loosened the piston stop, turned the crankshaft to the top dead center, and now I knew that this was the true one. Okay, now I'm gonna show you just a little bit of theory, so we know what we are doing. So I made this model of a crankshaft, and I made this degree wheel here, and I'm gonna attach the two together. Then I'm gonna make them one group so they are secured to each other, and now we have the exact same situation as we just did in the car. So now the two are one and they turn together. You see? Okay, so we found our top dead center of the crankshaft and we positioned the flywheel, the degree wheel there. So when I was rebuilding the TR4 engine and I degreed the camshaft there, what I did was I used the method of the peak of the intake valve. It means that if you look in the manual, there are 4 different camshafts in the production of the TR6, and these 2 are for petrol injection, these 2 are for the carburetor. So for before 72, because our engine is 1970, this should be the one. And what it says here is that the inlet opens 10 degrees before top dead center and closes 50 degrees after bottom dead center. That's a typo here. That should be ABDC because it's after bottom dead center. So what does this mean? This means that if we turn our cam to 10 degrees before top dead center, our crankshaft to 10 degrees before top dead center, this means that here is where our intake valve is gonna start to open. And when it starts to open, it's gonna go keep opening, keep opening, keep opening. Somewhere here it's gonna be fully open, but we don't know where exactly. And then 50 degrees after bottom dead center, which is here, it's gonna be closed again, fully closed. So we need to find this point here, where is the peak of the intake valve. So to find that, I'm gonna just position that perfectly at 10 degrees before top dead center. I want it absolutely perfect. Okay, so here is where our cycle starts, and here it is where it ends at 50 degrees after bottom dead center. Okay, so now when I start turning the crankshaft, in the bottom right corner right here, it shows how many degrees does it travel. So from 10, that's where we start. So now it's at 0. Now it starts turning, keeps turning, keeps turning, keeps turning, and then at 50 degrees after bottom dead center, we can see at the bottom right corner that we traveled for 240 degrees on the crankshaft. This means that the full cycle of opening and closing of the intake valve is equal to 240 degrees. Half of it is opening, half of it is closing. So 120, which is half of the 240, 120 degrees after it starts to open, it is going to be at its peak. So 120 degrees from here, from where we start, is going to be, again I'm watching the bottom right corner right here, 120 degree is right here. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 90, 100, 110 degrees. So 110 after top dead center is our peak. This is where our intake valve is fully open. So what we had to do was to find the position of the camshaft in which the intake valve is fully open, secure it there, then turn the crank to 110 degrees after top dead center, secure it there, install the chain, and our camshaft is degreed. But I have a little problem here. I'm not sure which one of these camshafts I have in the car. I have the feeling that it is not this one. If it is this one, and we do the same math as we just did, we're gonna find that the peak of the intake valve is again at 110 after top dead center, which is good. But if we look at this one, if we do the same math, I did it, and on this one we can see that the peak of the intake valve is not at 110 but it's 105 degrees. So it's a little bit tricky. I'm not sure which one of these I have in the car, and I don't want to use this method. Plus there is one more reason I don't want to use this method, and it is because I just want to have a video of the other method. I already have TR4 done in the method of the peak of the intake valve. Now I want to do a different thing for the TR6. I'm gonna use the method of the point of the cam when the two valves are equally open. And what does this mean is, now I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna position this into top dead center now again. So right here. Okay, now our crankshaft is at top dead center. First and 6 are at top dead center. Now, as we said, let's say we have this one, but it's valid for all of them, but I'm gonna go with this one for now. So it opens at 10 before and closes 50 after bottom dead center. So I'm gonna draw the whole cycle here. This represents the cycle of the intake valve. Here it starts to open at 110 after top dead center it's fully open and starts to close, and 50 after bottom dead center is fully closed. So that's our intake valve, and I'm gonna move it away, but I'm gonna make a copy and I'm gonna put it back to mock up the exhaust valve. So if I turn this to this position, this is gonna show me the cycle of the exhaust valve. What I mean is the exhaust opens at 50 before bottom dead center and closes at 10 after top dead center. So 50 before bottom dead center it starts to open, somewhere here it's fully open and starts to close, and here it's fully closed again, 10 degrees after top dead center. If we bring back the intake valves and put it back, you see how they overlap right here. Between 10 degrees before top dead center and 10 degrees after top dead center, the two overlap. How do they overlap? The exhaust, which started to open here it's fully open, and here it starts to close. So at top dead center it's almost closed because it closes fully here, but here it's still not closed. There is a little bit opening in it. And the same way, the intake started to open already, but here it's not fully open, but it just started to open and it has a little bit of opening in it. And in theory we should have exactly the same amount of opening in the intake valve and the exhaust valve when we are at the top dead center of the crankshaft. So all we have to do is to find on the camshaft, which is somewhere here in the engine, turn the camshaft until we find the point where the two valves on the first cylinder are equally open. And I'm going to show you how to find this position. But once we find this position, We lock the camshaft there, we don't move it anymore. Then we find the top dead center of the crankshaft. We position it there, we don't move it anymore. We install the chain and we are good to go. So that was the theory. Let's do that now on the engine. So now I had to make sure that this top dead center is at the exhaust stroke, not at the power stroke, right? So I was looking at the push rods and I made sure that they both move a little bit when I am at around this top dead center. Then I installed my dial gauge on the intake push rod. And then I backed up a little bit the crankshaft and approached the top dead center in the direction of rotation, and this way I was sure that there was no slack in the chain. And now with the crank in top dead center I zeroed the dial gauge. Now this is very important. We know that in this point the intake valve just started to open, right? Because it starts to open before top dead center. So if we go backwards with the crankshaft, it's gonna close again. And when it's fully closed, the dial gauge will stop moving, right? Because the valve is closed and it doesn't move anymore. When the dial gauge stops, it's gonna show us the exact difference between a fully closed valve and a little bit open valve at the top dead center, because we zeroed the gauge at the top dead center, right? And it stopped at 22 thousandths of an inch. I checked that a couple of times, as you saw already. Now it is fully closed and the gauge shows 22. And when I turn the crank to top dead center, the gauge shows 0. So the difference between fully closed and a little bit open valve at the top dead center is 22 thousandths of an inch. So now I'm gonna move the gauge to the exhaust valve and we're gonna do the same thing there. So I zeroed the gauge at top dead center again. And the only difference here is that we know that the exhaust valve at top dead center is almost closed. This means that if we go in the direction of rotation, it's gonna keep closing, and in a little while it's gonna be fully closed. So even if we keep turning the crank, the gauge is not gonna move anymore. And it stopped at 17 thousandths of an inch. So here it is again. I'm approaching the top dead center in the direction of rotation, so there's no slack on the chain, and the dial gauge shows 0. Then I keep going in the direction of the rotation and the exhaust closes. And here where it is fully closed. Even if I keep going with the crankshaft, it doesn't move anymore. So it stopped at 17. This means that at top dead center it was open 17 thousandths of an inch. And then to double check, I moved the dial gauge to the intake again. It would be good if I had 2 dial gauges, but I don't. I zeroed it again at top dead center. Then, because this is the intake, I went backwards with the crank. And again the dial gauge stopped moving at 22. So the conclusion, with this setup of the chain, when the crankshaft is at the top dead center, the intake is open 22 thousandths of an inch and the exhaust is open 17 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so they are not equal. But when will they be equal? The difference is 5 thousandths of an inch. So if we back up a little bit the crankshaft from top dead center, by the time the intake closes with 2.5 thousandths, the exhaust will open with 2.5 thousandths. This means that they will be at 19.5, both of them, because the intake from 22.5 will become 19.5 and the exhaust from 17 will become 19.5. So I want to find this point where the two valves are at 19.5. And that's very easy, because we know that here at 22 our intake is fully closed. So we have to open it 19.5. So 22 minus 19.5 is 2.5. So I just had to turn the crank until the gauge shows 2.5, which is right here. Again, I'm approaching it in the clockwise direction. So 2.5 on the gauge, and the crank shows less than 1 degree. So the two valves are equally open at less than 1 degree before top dead center. We're never gonna get it better than that, so that's perfect, because I also know that if we are not at exact top dead center, it's better to be a little bit in advance. So our timing is perfect. Actually, the marks on this engine are very good, and I eyeballed them very well. So there's no need of adjustment, but if I needed to, I had to move back and forth the chain until I get to the point where the two valves are equally open at the top dead center. So that's it with the agreeing the cam. I hope I didn't lose you somewhere on the way, because to be honest, I got lost many times. And now I'm gonna show you very quickly why do I think that this camshaft is not any of the ones shown in the manual. I slowed this down so I can show you where the intake starts to open. So now I'm at 80 before top dead center, and I'm going clockwise slowly, and right here the dial gauge starts to move. And this is 52 before top dead center, which is extremely early. If we look at the manual again, we will see that all the cams, all the intakes open at 18, 35, 18 or 10 before top dead center, but 52, there's no such thing. So I don't know, maybe it's a performance camshaft, maybe it's from a different car, maybe GT6 or something like that. I don't know, but we will see when we assemble the engine how is it gonna run. Well, thanks for watching so fast. We managed to cover everything in less than 23 minutes, and I'll see you next time.